Oh yeah. Oh, it smells like coffee. Hey, welcome to the barn. Mother Nature is confused right now. Over the course of the week, we've lost most of the snow, except for the snow banks, and now it's snowing again. So I don't know what's going on, but hey, it's mid-March. Anything's possible. So, since last time, I got the tires back with I got the wheels back with the new tires. Now, today's project is to get the beet juice back in the tires. I haven't quite figured out how that's going to work yet. I got my drill pump, I've got some hoses, I've got a couple different things, but we'll figure it out. So let's go. So here's what we're working with. My new valve stems are two-piece, so I can take off the regular Schrader valve or the whole deep core, which I've done. I also have this little hose adapter which fits either a Schrader valve or the full core. And that was my plan, was to hook up a hose to this and pressurize it. But looking at how this works, there's a pressure release air valve that you need to use to get the air back out. And so I imagine you got to pump fluid in until that air pressure builds up to the point where you got to release it, and then you got to stop pumping so that you don't push all the fluid back out the air release, because there's no, I thought maybe it would have like a separate Venturi tube or something, but it doesn't. So I think what I'm going to try to do is use this drill adapter with just some, 1/8 inch ID hose, which fits right through the valve stem and is going to give me a little bit of a seal release so that the air can come back out as I pump it up. My hope is that this fluid, which is pretty thick, is going to pump at a reasonable pace through this tubing. So I might end up shortening this just to make it a little bit less resistance, because I'm going to go from like a 5/8 inch hose down to an 1/8 inch. And so I'm going to have to go slow, and it's going to take a while to get all of this fluid back into these two tires. I'm also going to try to distribute what's left. I already emptied one bucket into the two bins. I'm going to take the second bucket, which looks like it has maybe 3.5 gallons, and I'm going to try to even these out. So when I put it back in the tires, both tires are close to the same weight, unlike before where one was definitely quite a bit heavier. So I'll try to even things out a little bit with that too. Stuff's like maple syrup almost. It's pretty chunky. It's right now about 40 degrees out. I wonder if this stuff gets thinner with heat. Maybe it'd be a little easier to use. Either way, I think we'll get it in. Well, that should be about equal. So if these are truly 18-gallon bins, then I guess we're right around 17 and a half, maybe 17 gallons. So that's 170 pounds for each back wheel. That's not bad. It helps keep the back on the ground. All right, we haven't even started, and I'm already getting annoyed with this drill pump I bought on Amazon. The first thing is that it's got a massive hose fitting on here. I thought that this would be big enough. This is 5/8 inch mini split condensate tubing, which I had hanging around, but apparently that's not even going to be enough. So I'm going to try to see if I can melt this down a little bit and stretch it, but it's not super optimistic. Got a little bit of space on that. Oh. Well, all right. First thing that's gone right all day, I guess. I don't know what they expect you to use on this, but I guess it's something bigger than your standard garden hose. I was just gonna use an old section. I had some hose sitting around. I thought I'd just use that, but that wasn't going on either. And I wasn't about to cut up my nice 3/4 inch hose. That thing's a fortune. So I guess now we'll find out if this will actually pump some fluid. I'm going to take this long hose off and I'm going to replace it with a length of shorter tubing. With the hope of reducing resistance. And that's not going to work because that doesn't fit into the hole. So back we go with the long tubing, but I am going to cut it a little bit shorter because I don't want to put any more blockage in the path than I have to. You know, my backup plan, if this all goes wrong, is just to use the same tool I used to extract it, but this is going to take a while with close to 35 gallons of beet juice to transfer. So, you hook that up, connect my drill, and we'll find out what's going to happen here. There we go. Once it primed, it does seem to be moving. Just for testing purposes, I'm going to pull this out and see what we got for flow. Actually, moving it along, so maybe this will work all right. Put that back in there and run away. And that's what happened. All right, back to the drawing board on that one. I was trying to stay clean today too. Man. Epic fail. All right, I thought that was going to work pretty good. And then it blew the fitting out the other side. Too much pressure. And now I got beet juice all over the tires and everywhere else. So, going to have to figure out how to secure that a little bit better before we go any further. Obviously, I had a little camera fail on that shot, and you missed this beautiful explosion when the press fitting came out of the end of the drill chuck. As I thought, the resistance was a little bit more than it could handle. So I'm going to actually just get some electrical tape on the joint here. I'm going to wrap from the actual pump body down and over both the press-in fitting and the section of tubing I'm using as well. And once that's in place, I'm going to clamp as an extra measure down with the provided hose clamp. Not that I think this is going to come out too easy, but I've already been made to look a fool once. I'm going to put this in low speed and try to keep it going smooth. Now it's not pumping, which tells me that either I've already destroyed the pump, which is a possibility, or, well, there it goes. Just take a look and see if we're actually moving fluid. I think I already destroyed this drill pump. All right, well, I guess the moral of the story is either buy a more expensive drill pump or don't buy a drill pump at all, because this is definitely not working out so good. Which means I'm going to do this the messy way, which I'm not looking forward to. The title of this video is going to be Pay Somebody. Well, since everything else is going wrong, I think I'm going to go with what might prove to be the MVP of this whole project. This little syringe thing. Tough part is that I gotta get it into that. Shoot. So the problem I have with this is that is just a little bit bigger than that tube, and when you put it in and it's all gooped up from dipping it in the beet juice, it creates a seal, and now it's pushing out all over the rim and making a mess. This is getting frustrating. Well, this is what I've resorted to, and it's going to take a very, very, very long time if this is the way I'm going to do it. Because that funnel, which I did fill to the top about 2 minutes ago, is actually trickling into that tire, but boy, is this going to be a slow process. So I'm going to have to figure out a faster way, because otherwise I'm going to have to come down here every hour for the next 2 months to get this juice in there. Oy. I don't ever say this, but this one might not actually happen. So here's the latest. I drained a couple of funnels full of beet juice into the tires. Then I decided that was just going way too slow, so I started making a funnel. And in the process of doing that, I moved the tire around, I washed it off, and I set it back down, and then I noticed a big puddle on the floor. And then I realized that the beet juice is leaking out of the rim through the bead. I didn't realize that when they fill these tires, they maintain at least 5 psi at all times, and they pump it in and then release pressure and then pump more in and release pressure back and forth, and that's how they fill the tires. So my assumption was that I could just zero this out and fill it up and it would hold just based on the rim seat. However, that's not really working. I may have jostled it free when I took it outside and washed it, and if that's the case, maybe it'll hold now, but it's still slowly trickling off pressure here. I've got it up to about 25 psi, and I'm just trying to make sure that the bead kind of reseals, because now it's had beet juice pouring through it. So I don't know, this might be one of those projects that I should have just spent the money on. All right, here's the latest in this crazy project. I've created this 5-gallon funnel. It does seem to be moving faster. I'm keeping an eye on the tire to see if it's leaking. I'm hoping that by repressurizing it and reseating the bead, it will hold at least enough for me to get the tire full, and then I can repressurize it and seat it again. If it starts leaking too bad, that may be the end of the project. We'll see. I'm using a paint bucket as a transfer into another 5-gallon bucket that I can then carry up the ladder and pour into the top funnel bucket. And yeah, I guess that's really where we're at. And we'll say that the bucket seems to be holding fairly well. The seam between the hose and the smaller hose, which I made up with an air compression fitting and a couple things, is I would say nominal at best. Let's get some drips. But at this point, with the prospect of basically abandoning all this beet juice or figuring out how to get as much as possible back into the tires, I'll live with a little bit spilled on the floor. God knows there's been plenty of it so far. I may also come back and find a gigantic oil slick of beet juice everywhere, in which case this may be my last YouTube video ever. All right, so we're back for day 2 of this, maybe you can call it a project. Yesterday I put probably 4 or 5 gallons of beet juice into this tire, but the whole time it was leaking out of the bead onto the floor, making an absolute mess. I tried to salvage as much as I could, but I'm sure I lost a little along the way. Not the end of the world, but I need to figure out how to catch what's leaking out of the rim and try to minimize it. I think what's happening is that this new R14 tire is a little on the narrower side. I mean, it fits good, but when it's not inflated, it's trying to pull the beads in a little bit on the tire, and that's loosening the rim. And when it's sitting on the ground and the tire is on the concrete or on the mat, the rim weight is coming down and opening up a little bit of a gap at the bottom, which is where the beet juice is leaking out. So today I want to try to support the weight of the rim, so if there's any gap that opens up, it's hopefully at the top of the tire, and hopefully that will not allow beet juice to leak out, at least not at the same rate. I'm also creating a little bit of a dish here to grab any beet juice that drips out. My hope is that this plastic will contain most of it, and if a little escapes, maybe I can catch it at the edges. Again, I'm making this up as I go along. I've cut a piece of 3-inch block, just some scrap I had laying around. And the tire, the back spacing on the tire is about 2.5 inches. So my hope is get this positioned how I'd like. Make sure my valve stem ends up on the high side. And at this point, the tire is maybe loose. And I do see that it's all contained within that dish I've created. So, fingers crossed, anything that leaks out now is going to be captured and I can then extract it. So I'm going to let the air back out of this again and see what happens. All right, so I got my funnel working pretty well. I ended up sealing it with some hot glue. It's got a slight drip, but it's really not too bad, and I'm catching the majority of it in this cup, so I'll be able to reuse it. I did get a good seal on the hose to 1/4 inch connection here. That's working out pretty nicely. And about 15 minutes, I've gone through, you know, a few gallons of fluid. So I think it's flowing about as good as it can get. While I was screwing around with this, I also went over to Tractor Supply and I picked up one of their drill pumps, hooked that all up. It worked. I will say it did work, but it was probably not flowing any faster than this gravity setup, and I was sitting there throttling the drill, trying not to over rev it and break it, and I kind of gave up on that after 10 minutes of sitting there listening to it whirl. So I think this is still the better solution, strangely enough. But just got to keep this topped off, and between that I get to do other things around the house, so that's pretty good. All right, we did it. We put almost 22 gallons of beet juice back into this tire, and as far as I can tell, it is not leaking. We'll see when I flip it over, but I don't see any signs like I was yesterday. So at this point, I'm going to put my inner valve stem back in place. I'm going to pressurize this back to about 35 psi. That'll give it plenty of pressure to seat the bead all the way around, and then we can start on tire number 2. So now the moment of truth. I tip this thing up. Oh yeah, she's heavy. And wow, look at that. Only like 2 drips, and I think, to be honest with you, those came from me pulling the tube. That's fantastic. So I think we learned something. Support the weight of the rim, and you won't have at least the same level of leaking problems that I had. Maybe just a little trickle, but that's fantastic. And here we are again. Let the air out of this one, and off we'll go. Now I got a fresh bucket, and we're going to start the whole process over again. And hopefully today will be the end of this monster project. Well, it's 11:30 at night, and I still got about half of a bucket to go. I was just thinking, I haven't had a blockage of the tube all day, but I do feel like it has slowed down considerably. It might be because it's only 32 degrees out, and perhaps the beet juice is getting a little thicker. But either way, we started the second tire at 3 o'clock this afternoon, about 3:10. So it's been going for 8+ hours. That's a long time. It's a long time. And I'm getting tired, and but it's supposed to rain in a couple hours, and I'm hoping to finish it off. So I think I'm gonna go in, set an alarm for another hour or so, and just hope that when I come out, that bucket is just about kicked. We did it. We're actually down to the bottom of the barrel. It is 12:55 in the morning, but we're there. Sweet. We did it. We actually did it. All the tires are back on. They look, well, they look wet, but they look beautiful. I really hope we get a little bit more snow just because I want to see how these things do in the snow. But they've got to be better than the R4s I had, which were pretty bald, and they look pretty sweet. So the big question, now that I've had a couple hours to sleep on it, would I do it all again? I think the answer is yes, but I would do a couple of things to better prepare myself. The first thing I would do is rig up a good bucket system. The 5-gallon bucket was key, but what you really need is like a through fitting that's really sealed and can handle pressure. One of the ideas that I came up with was putting the top back on and actually using a little tire valve and putting maybe 3 or 4 psi in there just to force the issue along. I thought that would have worked pretty good, except for my hose situation was leaking, and I knew that if I pressurized it, it was just going to make an absolute mess. But if I had more confidence in my hose, I probably would have done something like that. It wouldn't be a bad idea to strain the beet juice before you put it back in. Even if you ran it through a, just a colander from the kitchen, just to get the big chunks out. One of the things I found today when I went back to my equipment that I washed out hastily in the middle of the night is I found a lot of, I guess what would be paint chips in the small line. So that was definitely part of the reason why it took so long to get that last tire full, was that fluid was working its way through a bunch of debris. And even though I did blow it out once or twice, it was still stuck in there. It took quite a bit actually to get it out. Even today with the airline, I flushed it a couple times before I got it all out of there. So that was definitely a problem. To that end, if I were building that funnel, one thing I would do is put a shutoff on the bottom of the hose, the thick hose section. And then when I transition into the thin hose that fits through the valve stem, that way I could take that off, shut the flow off, take it off and clean it periodically when I noticed that it wasn't going down as fast. But aside from that, the trick of holding the wheel weight, the rim weight up really worked. I didn't have any real leakage from the tire on the second day once I started supporting the weight of the rim. So putting the tire on the ground, let the rim drop and it leak. I guess it's just about patience. So if you have tires that are filled with juice and you want to save it, you want to save the money on the next set of tires, hey, more power to you. I got it done. It did take a while, but I'm happy that I didn't spend a few $100 on refilling the tires, I guess. So anyway, that's about it. I cleaned up the floor, and hopefully it won't be too sticky from here on out. And next time we have a nice day, I'm going to give old baby here a good washing, because it's dirty from the winter. Now it's all wet from being out in the mist. It's kind of a rainy day here. So yeah. All right, well, thanks for watching this this series on beet juice. Whoever knew it was so exciting. I'll hit you up in the future with maybe something a little less sticky. All right? Enjoy your day. Thanks for watching.